Yo, yo. Oh, I should stop this thing here for a second. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Everybody's all excited about this MPC Key 61. You know, honestly, I haven't even really looked at the reviews and stuff like that on. I haven't dug into it yet. I do think, like, what are my thoughts on those things? Um, First of all, I don't know with relationship to the Force if there's going to be like what's going to happen with that. You know, like the whole NPC Force relationship is kind of a funny one. I've talked about this before. Like the Force is kind of like the bastard child of of the of the whole equation, right? You know, because it's like is the Force part of NPC stuff world? I mean, are they into that? Yes, because they use all the same plugins and all the advancements and things like that kind of translate over, but the NPC is also a different beast in terms of the workflow. So that's the question that I have is like, is the Force going to actually benefit from like the NPC 61? You know, is it gonna work for that? I don't know. So that's my thoughts on that. But yeah, how are you guys all doing today? And like yeah, I was just saying I don't think anybody's on there yet, but like now that just some people are here, uh I think well yeah, it's definitely not an NPC, right? It's like this weird hybrid, and I think they don't. I think Akai isn't even quite sure what to do with the Force in relationship to the NPC because it's like sometimes they want it to be more like Ableton, like it's an Ableton extension, and then they kind of want it to be like an NPC also, and so it kind of ends up being a little bit or not as much of both, right? It's like sure the same, you know, you go to an NPC and it's going to look like this, right? This is what an NPC looks like, and so you know they have the same kind of plugins. You do the track edit, you do sample edit. These things are exactly the same, except for when you get to the range view, that's like totally different from the other stuff. The you know the clip, the way you edit notes, the way that you get sounds, all the expansions are all the same. Controlling Ableton, doing macros, all that kind of stuff. It's like very similar, but the workflow is really different. And so that's where I don't even know if something like the NPC Key 61, if that's going to, um, I haven't looked at it yet, but I mean, if it's similar to how like the Native Instruments one does, where essentially you can kind of like run the software from the device, right? You could do like is someone going to be able to do the MPC software from the Key 61, so they could just like not even use the MPC and just use the software and play off the keyboard and do the pads that way? You know, that might be the case. So being that the Force doesn't have anything relevant to that is a question for me of like, I don't know, is that going to even necessarily relate to that? So um, what do you, William, what do you mean by that when you're saying the push 3? You're talking about the MPC Key 61, or you're talking about like the Force, what it's supposed to be? I know there's this like weird lag between when I'm talking and when I'm reading something. I'm watching my own video and there's like probably a good 10-second delay between when I talk and when you even get to hear what I'm saying. Oh, yeah, you're right. I did sort of think, I wondered if the Force was going to be something like that too, or was really going to be more integrated into Ableton. And yeah, that totally did not end up being the case. It's kind of leaned way more into MPC category than it ever did um, into Ableton type stuff. Sort of, except for the workflows, much more that way. But yeah, they definitely, you watch those beginning videos, they were like, oh my gosh, the Force is like super connected with the Ableton, and you can push a button and you can jump back and forth, and you're basically like working in Ableton, but you have this like standalone type of capability. And then that was just like not anything like the case. Well, they couldn't even do that for 6 months. I gave the Force back initially because I bought it, and I talked to Sweetwater, and I was like, look, this is totally false advertising. It said they could do this whole thing, and it didn't even do it. So they tried to contact someone at Ableton, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know how this works with it. And so I was like, I'm just going to send my Force back. Of course, it was like 3 months later that they came out with the update to finally integrate with that. But the fact that no one had, the Sweetwater guy was talking to his reps at Ableton and at MPC and like, I mean, at Akai, and like no one knew anything about it was pretty hilarious. But all that said, it definitely seems like Akai is like going pretty hard into, they're going pretty hard into like making some interesting improvements with things. So, you know, over the years, I think they really seem to be more focused on the software side of things rather than cranking out new devices, and that is a really promising side to it. So, because that's what you really need, right? You really need. It's like the hardware is fine. We don't need a new Force. We don't need a new machine. We just need some of the software to be fixed with it. In the same way that they're really leaning into all these other devices and things like that with Air technology, that it's going to really make it. They seem to be just going nuts with the Air stuff, which is kind of crazy because they bought that back in like 2012. So the fact that like they're just now cranking into that is they must have just been in development for a long time to really transition that stuff into the MPC world. So anyways, how you guys all doing today? Should we make a beat together? Do something like that? Someone had asked before about messing around a little bit with the arranger, and we could definitely talk about that. To be honest, I don't really dive that deep into the arranger, primarily because I just find that it's not how I want to. It's not how I want to work as much in there. And here's the reason that I don't use the arranger all that much, is I feel like the arranger is, well, it's great if you want to lay out a song. It definitely works for that degree. And I think if people lean into it really well, the arranger could be a great way to record something. I don't like getting in there and automating stuff in there, so I would rather set up the Force to be more performance oriented and to perform into the arranger, which then brings up the challenge of you do have to then you are going to have to make some edits, and I think that's where things get a little bit trickier when you're coming in here and you're having to like look at notes, but you have this little tiny screen down here that you're trying to adjust things with, and you can get into that and start to edit some stuff in there, but some of it's going to work a little better, I think, if you kind of like get used to performing it. And that's I think ultimately that's kind of the flow, and the same thing, that's a lot what Ableton was in the beginning, or at least in that process. You set up these clips, and then you're like, okay, let's get ready to go on this. And actually I should pull up, well, let me reload this. So a couple weeks ago we did a little track together, but it was just a track in clips, and let's record that into the arranger and kind of mess around with it. And see, I keep looking over there because I forgot that That's where I usually put the camera. Actually, I'm going to do that right now because that's what I'm used to. There we go. Now I'm used to looking over here for the camera. And let's record this into the range view. So right now, what do I got in the range view? Kind of nothing, except for this little part right here, which I'm not sure where this came from or why that I recorded that. But let's go ahead and delete those ones. And then let's take this jam that I did and like mess around with recording it into the Ranger. The other thing that I noticed that from when you're recording things into the Ranger that is different from Ableton. Ableton, when you record something from clips into the Ranger, it still contains it as a clip. And so when you switch over, if you're doing legato mode, so if I was going between these two clips and bouncing back and forth, it contains it in a little box, so to speak. So the clip is still intact. You only just used part of that clip and then you moved on to the next one. But in the Force, what's a little bit different is it's just taking the notes or whatever you played in there and tossing that into the Ranger. So it doesn't contain it very well. What I mean by that is if the clip that you're using is like stretching out past what you used it for, let's say your clip is like this, it doesn't just take that clip and move it up there. If there's things in your clip that hang over, it then has stuff hanging over into the range view, and that's a little bit weird. I don't understand. Well, maybe it'll explain. I can get it to duplicate that and we can talk about it. But here's a little jam that I did a couple weeks ago with this weird lo-fi. No, that was not it. I moved on to, here we go. And let's look at each individual clips we got going on here. So I have this sound, some drums on this. This is from the Neo Sunset expansion. And let's look at our clip for this. Here, I think it was just... a little bit sloppy playing. I like it because I like doing some stuff with lo-fi where I'm not being on the grid fully. But the 8 measures was totally straightforward. Okay, so then track number 2 is I did cut this one short. And let's just solo this one and find out what's on this track. Yep, okay, so that's what's going on track number 2. And then this track here, track number 3 is this. A little bit more percussion. And let's get over to this track here and see what we got going on. Nothing. And then this one here. Okay, let's look at what's going on in this clip here. So this is this little piano part that I had that was happening here. Hey, David, how's it going? Okay, so this is a good example. I think this is going to create the problems that I was talking about. Yep. Okay, so this clip here, let's zoom out so I can show you what's going on here. If you guys can see that on the screen. So I have a phrase that's going about 4 bars, but what I did in this time is that I pulled that into, I think it was about right here where I did it. So in the clip, it actually spills over, but I'm going to actually make it that short. And I did this so I want it to be a regular length. I like using, irregular loops because then it breaks you out of the 4/4 kind of repetition. And maybe that just comes from when I was growing up, I did classical piano. That was my main thing. In college, actually, I was a piano performance major, and the thing they drill into you is never play something the same twice. if you're going to repeat lots of classical music, repeats phrases, so the whole idea of a loop is not new. They would write a piece of music and the A section repeat, and then you go into the next one. I find that you don't know what you're doing a lot. What do you mean by that? So then you are going to the next one and then the next section, and you repeat back again, and you need to be able to play something a little bit different. So the whole point of that is that each time you loop around, you should be changing it up. And in electronic music, the temptation is it's so easy to cut and paste. You just grab something and you copy and you paste it from one section to the next, and then that's what it ends up being. And then you don't do anything to change it. So you're going to have these repetitive 4-bar phrases, and our brains really don't dislike repetition. So by changing something to be like 3 bars and 1 note, then it's going to be irregularly overlapping. So if I even do this with the metronome so you can hear. So it repeats, and it's going to be an irregular length. So that's what's going on in that one. And so let's go into, let's get into the arrange view, and then we'll kind of do it this way. I'm still laughing at your comment there, Jim. I'm not an expert in the Force. I'm just someone who likes using it, and we're doing these like times together. I'm never proclaimed to say that I'm somehow like have dedicated my life to being the Force user of that. We're talking about the difference between technology and like knowing something about music. My background is in knowing something about music, and we're using a device to make music. So I think it's very important to like not get overly focused on any particular piece of gear and just look at them as tools to get there. And so I like using the Force, but I use other pieces of gear to make music too. So, all right, so let's record this into the arrange view. We're going to hit record and then click record to arrangement. And at this point in time, I'm just actually going to go to the launch view here, and I'm going to go ahead and start by hitting the launch button, and we're going to record into this arrange view here. Okay, let's stop right at that point right there. Okay, so this one I think is a little bit of a limitation with regard to the way that the arranger works in the Force is that you don't have any sort of like, you don't necessarily have a really good sense of where those clips were. So all the other clips that were there, this one here, this one, these first 3 tracks, they were more of a standard length, I believe, because I'm looking at them. No, that's not true. So the first one was 4 bars that repeated. I don't know if I can pull I need like a pointer. I'm going to use a drumstick rather than my finger. Okay, so the first track was 4 bars. The second track was not 4 bars because if you can see this pattern, I don't know if it's even big enough to see on there on the screen. It's hard to get it to be like the right length there for you to see it. So the second track is less than 4 bars. You can see that little pattern above is starting to shift over. Maybe you can't really see that very well. And then this fourth one down below is also an irregular length. So I wish it showed you like somehow the clip when the clip is restarting, like Control Alt. What do you mean by the Control Alt thing? I can't read and talk at the same time. It's too distracting. So yeah, so when you're getting into this particular view right here, you aren't able to see what those clips are. So when you're going to want when you want to edit something, what you're going to basically need to do is you're going to just have to kind of get in here to these notes and then start editing them around or changing them. And I think it's a really good way to get started if you kind of want to just record things in there. But ultimately, I'd encourage anybody who's trying to record in the range views really to think about what you're doing with the clips and how you're wanting the transitions and other things like that to go, and essentially kind of perform that. So in this situation, if I was performing these ones, I might do some effects on it, whatnot, and just think about the loops and the pattern. And then and this one here, I changed the key on that. So if I was really going to go through this over again, I'm going to record back into the range view and record this whole thing over again. Thanks, Fabian. I appreciate that. All right, let's record this over, and I'm going to jump back and forth between these two clips here. Okay, that's enough, a little bit of space to do something. So I got a little pattern there that I did where I am, I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so I did 2 measures in my first row, and then for not 2 measures, sorry, 4 bars for this row, and then 2 bars to switch to the other one, and then 2 bars to switch back again. So that's what I got as my pattern. And let's record into, what's this? What am I doing this track? Is this a plugin? Yep, that's what it is. Okay, so let's just record into that one. And in this situation, I'm going to make sure that I'm going back to the arrange view. I don't want to be triggering clips anymore. I want to be playing from the arrange view. So that's the part that's a little bit weird for those of you who are trying to like conceptualize the difference between arranger and clips, is that you need to set which one is going to be what's playing. You can always override what's happening in the arranger by starting to push clips and other things like that. And if I was playing this and I start pushing these other buttons like this, well, I didn't want to quite record into there. Do you see how this track showed up and that little play button happened on the right? And what that means is that ultimately I kind of overwritten, or not overwritten, that's not the right word. I basically disabled what's happening in the range view for that track, and now it's playing based upon the clip. However, everything else is playing as if it was from the arrange view. So this is kind of your cue as to whether or not you want things to be settled into the arrange view or you want it to be settled into the clips. And you can have it be a mix. As you notice right here, only this track number 3 is set to be now playing by the clips, and everything else is by the range view. And if I'm playing along, this is going to be what's overriding what's happening in that track. So I can jump between different clips here. Well, it's all kind of the same thing, so it's not a very good example in this situation. If I start playing something else here, you can see this pops up, and now that is being overwritten. Someone give me a different term rather than saying overwritten, because it sounds more like you're actually writing over it, and that's not the right one. That's not the right way to say it. I can't think of a better way of saying it, but ultimately, it is now, what I'm hearing is based upon what I'm doing on the clips. not necessarily what's happening in the range view. So override, but when I say override, is that, yeah, maybe the override's enough. I just don't want it to sound like it's okay, we'll just use override. I think that is clear. Okay, so then I want to be back to the other one. So now if you're recording in there, you just got to make sure that you don't ever touch any other clips and take precedence. Yeah, these what's happening in the range view is now going to take precedence over what's happening on the clips. You start to touch the clips again, and they will take precedence and they'll bounce back in control. So you got to think about which one you want to be having precedence. We'll use that one to be the dominant one. Then if I record, okay, so let's just record a part directly into the arranger instead of into a clip first. Okay, so I've already got these parts. I've said back to the arranger. These clips are somewhat essentially disabled. That you won't even see them blinking because what's coming out of it is whatever got recorded into the arrange view. So let's start this over, and I'm going to record directly into the arranger. And I'm going to record the solo part. I like this sound. I forgot about this solo sound. It's kind of got that like pitch change thing that's happening. I forgot what this was. Oh yeah, Odyssey. And one of the oscillators is like detuned. So that's kind of a fun way of doing it. All right, let's record this solo part into this track here. Make sure I'm on the same thing again, recording to the arrangement. We'll start from the beginning again. Okay, let's start with that. You can see that I just recorded that part that's in there. I actually want to do that over. And I want to change these knobs to, I can't make it to screen. You know what? I'm going to do the second set of knobs that are here. Yeah, so that I can watch things happening on the screen. And I'm going to go into macros and I'm going to change this knob right here. Let's map that to the track edit, and I'm going to go to the filter and do the cutoff for that. Okay? Because I want to be able to like change that sound a little bit more. It's a little bit too flat for my taste. So now although that sound doesn't really like have a lot of range with it. I'm not sure why. Actually, I think I'm going to just I'm going to change that. I'm going to crank it all up. I'm going to unmatch it from that. I'm going to put a filter on that individual track. And then I'm going to change that because that filter in there wasn't really, I didn't feel like it was really giving me much range. I basically had to have it almost off and then it was working. So in this situation, I'm going to put a filter here, just a tiny bit of drive with it. And then I'm going to come back into my macros, touch this knob, go to learn. This time go to the mixer. And I'm going to take it, I'm going to adjust the filter from this side here. Okay. So now I think I should be able to get more out of that. Much better. Okay. So what I would say when you, just as a something about the filters, is sometimes just throwing a filter on there. If you want to do that, then take the individual sound from that track and just crank it up all the way rather than trying to use the filter in the if you have room in your effects change, rather than using the filter on the Odyssey itself, because when I was doing that, it really wasn't making that much of a difference. If we go back to the Odyssey, it just wasn't like right there. Look, I don't know if you can see that on the screen. It is basically like, I mean, that's with it all the way down. So that isn't giving me much to cut off. Like that's at full right there. And I'm only at 20% up with that knob. So in this situation, I'm just going to crank it all the way up and then use the filter as an effects on the track. So now when I play this, it gives me much more range to play with. And I think I want to do even more resonance on that maybe even more resonance. Of course, now the problem, and all right, I'm going to try to avoid, I was going to try to avoid bitching about the force today, but I'm sorry, I ran into it again. I wish that you could rearrange the effects on this track. Oh, like that's what I would say out of any of these updates. I was like, can you just allow us to rearrange plugins on the effects change? Anybody else on board with this? Oh my gosh, it's so frustrating because what I really want to do is I want to put this filter in the beginning. Because right now it's filtering, it's like, it's a little bit too much resonance. I really want to have the filter happening and then the reverb happening after that. I guess I could just move the reverb. That's probably easier because I don't want to unmap the filter, and I do have a spot later. So let's see, what would this was like somewhat of room size. So I'm going to disable this one and come back and look at it. What do you think is a sensible idea, David? Just the ability to rearrange the tracks or just move you're just talking about my decision or Akai's decision? Yeah, so I want there we go, that's better. I want the reverb to come after the filter because I want it to I don't want to clamp down the filter sound. Reorder tracks, rearrange effects, yeah, that seems like, and that's the same thing on the MPC too. They have that same problem. You can't rearrange the tracks, you can't rearrange the, sort of. It's a little bit of a cheat because you can't do it on the standalone, but you can in the software. So you can do it. You could be working in the software, get them to where you want to be, and download it onto the hardware, and then you're rolling. So we don't have that with the Force as a possibility. Okay, so now I'm going to come and make sure that my record automation is on at right so that I can change that. I'm going to come to the arrange view, and we're going to do this track over again. Okay, make sure I'm back to the Ranger, and I think that I can just record. I think I can just record over the top of this one, but let's go ahead and try it. So hit record to the Ranger. We got all the other tracks that are already rolling. All I'm doing is recording this lead part. Oh yeah, thank you. That's what I thought you meant. Okay, here we go. Yeah, and I don't think you can. I've messed around with it. I don't think you can. But maybe he did it on the software. Again, I think that's where it happens. But um, yeah, I know the leapfrogging copy and paste tracks is doable as long as you don't mess up and do it the wrong way. The one thing that doesn't work when you're leapfrogging traps, and for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, leapfrogging is where you just basically take, I want this track to be over here or in the middle. So I'd have to like copy and paste it over here at the end, delete it out of this track. And if I want it to be in the middle, then I'm going to have to copy this track, paste it over here, and then delete it from here, and then take this track, copy it over here, and delete it from here. And now I've rearranged it so that this track is now here instead of over here. That works really good, except for if you notice what happened is I just lost my macro. So you can't copy and paste macros when you move them. So if you set up any macros, you're screwed. Yeah, because I lost my macro that I set up for, I don't remember which track it is here. It was this track right here. Right? Yeah, because I didn't have any clip. I didn't have a clip related to it. Okay. So, yeah, just kind of mess up this whole order or whatever. But then I lost my macro, so I'd have to come back in and, set that whole thing up. But I'm curious if it actually erased my automation. It should keep the automation in there, even though I got rid of a macro. But let's check. This is actually a really good test to figure that out. Oh, snap. That would be really a pain in the why is that not playing my track? Oh, sorry. I got to go back to the range view. That's a good example. If you forget to, if you mess around down here when I was messing around the tracks, I have to hit back to range view to override. That's the word we were looking for. Yeah, but I don't hear it playing my track. So what happened with that particular track? That's super weird. When I moved it, it kind of like jacked it up. Because I don't see this. So this track right here was the lead that I recorded. It's right here in these notes, and it's like now sort of not playing, even though it's there. It's, it's set up. It's kind of like stuck on the filter for that. But that doesn't make any sense why it shouldn't be working, because it's right there. Back to the arrange. I wonder what's causing that. Here's my part. It's got the velocity levels that are all set there. Yeah, it's like it ghosted it. It turned it into a ghost track or something like that. That is so weird. Anybody else have that issue? Yeah, that's what I just looked, and to see if the filter was totally closed. I'm going to the mixer, and I'm going to the filter, and the filter's at 9 kilohertz. That's plenty loud enough. I mean, I can play it. It's here. You know, so the filter's up all the way. It's not. Oh, you know what? No, the filter's moving around. It's just like there's no sound coming out of these notes. And that was working before, wasn't it? When I played this track, we played it back and I heard it play. But when we copied and pasted it, it like jacked it up for some reason. So maybe take that as a warning that if you're going to copy and paste tracks that you might lose what's there. Let's try to replicate that again. Let's just, let's copy and paste it to a new track. I mean, see if that's probably not going to. Am I muting the track for some reason? No, let's mute the one track. And I'll go ahead and delete. Oh, I can't delete it out of there like that. I gotta go into here. Yeah, let's try recording over the top of it again. I'm gonna do the right automation. I'm gonna put my, it might be glitch, but you know, these are glitches to, it's kind of the point of these times here is to like, not to figure out what's wrong, but just, you know, figure out what not to do. Let's go back to my track. I want to make sure I go to this filter setting here, get it in there, go back to my macros, take it off learn. Okay, so this is working. Let's record into this track again. Go back to my range view, and I'm recording down here. I just muted this track. If you're following along, I just muted this one because there's something messed up with it. Oops, let's go like this here. Okay, gotta record arm the track, so that wasn't really working. Back to the arranger, record in the arrangement. Here we go. I'm not worrying about what I'm playing at the moment. Okay, let's get about to stop. Let's play that back. Of course, that isn't working either, so that's kind of weird. Oh, what am I doing to this particular track? Why is it not playing? That's why. Oh, it was just the fact that it was on in instead of auto. That's why I was doing it. So not a glitch, user error. The monitor needed to be on automatic instead of not. And I think I had this pulled up from a previous template. That's why I was kind of messed up, is because I was using it. I wanted to map this specifically to, I wanted to map this specifically to this track so that even if I was on something else or playing some other clips, that my MKPK Mini was being able to play this particular lead sound. So I must have had it on in. I think I was playing it solo. So that's why I wasn't playing. It wasn't the fact that copy and pasting it ruined it, but just to make sure, let's copy and paste this again somewhere else, and we'll mute the other one. So now it's coming through track number 7. What the hell? This is so annoying. Back to arranger. There we go. Yep, it's working now. Okay, so between all that kind of stuff, if you're using the Force, don't get too discouraged if you like bounce around to the wrong stage and you're trying to oh my gosh, yeah, hasn't that just case in point right here? I'm like, why is that not working? And then you have to come over to the mixer and be like, oh my gosh, it was set to auto and not in, or whatever, in instead of auto, or something else is going on. You do have to kind of like get your workflow down pretty well. This shows the drawback of what happens when you're using a previous template and you're jumping into it. So this was something I recorded, I don't know, a month ago or so for doing Force Fridays, and was using this track, and so I just opened it up so that I could utilize it, and I forgot that I did the settings that way, so it kind of screws you up. So yeah, look around, especially when you're going between the arranger and the clips. There's so much opportunity to do that, not hitting back to the arranger. Why is it not playing? All that kind of stuff rapidly adjusts. And I wonder even if I copy this track. Okay, so that's also something interesting to note. Do you see how that when I copied this track, it automatically, can you guys see that okay? Yeah. So I'm going to copy this track. I can delete these other two now, or at least one of them. When I copy the track, it disables it automatically in the arranger. So, yeah, so copying from 6 to 7, check it out. Oops, I just deleted it. Okay, so what I meant to do was to copy number 6 to number 7. And if you notice in those situations, okay, let's try that again here. I'm not doing a very good job of illustrating my point. Let's copy number 6 to number 7. Oh, interesting. So it disabled, well, I thought it did the opposite last time. It disabled number 6. And that one's now back to range view. So you just got to like pay attention if you're going to be looking with arranger, and just whether or not you need to like bring these back to the arranger, or if it's going to be on the clip view. Just kind of a lot of stuff to watch out for there. So yeah, I'll make one comment here and then I got to go for this week. I mean, I think it's great that Akai is really leaning into all that kind of stuff, because what I said way earlier is that as a piece of hardware, I mean, I don't know really what you would do that much more to improve upon this. Maybe make a screen that pops up or something like that, but I can't imagine that they need to really do anything with what's here. It's more of a software change, which means that it has some potential. Like why they don't work on the rearranging effects and they keep just dumping a bunch of other stuff in there is a bit annoying. But that like being able to do, being able to like approach it in this way is a great way of like being able to make some improvements. So better sounds, more effects, all that kind of stuff is just going to make it stronger as a whole. So I'm definitely all for it. I think it's a great, great improvements. Actually, I think it's showing that they are paying attention to the fact that where they need to do the improvements is with the software, and not just coming out with a new MPC Live 3 or Force number 2. It's like, this is good enough already. Like, just work on the software, get us some more stuff on the inside, improve the MIDI capabilities and the workflow. And especially, I think being able to, I don't know if you've seen it on the MPC, but they have a new kind of like little window over here where you, well, where you can slide from the left, and then you can just put the ones that you most want on there, so you don't have to keep bouncing between all these different menu items. Well, the Force has got more buttons, so we have more things to work with already than like the MPC does. But to be able to rearrange some of these things and put them on a side menu, to be able to get there, you know. So um, the $150, what do you mean by the 150? You mean for some of the new plugins and all that kind of stuff, to paying extra money for them? I mean, really, honestly, what I would love to see is if they came up with some sort of like, I do feel like I would love to see them come up with some sort of uh, software for the Force to use on a computer, so that you could like work on it up there and then download stuff on the Force, because the screen is small and you're fingering, you know, my fingers are not very accurate. You can't really get in there and like you know, I guess I could try using a stylus or something like that. The Apple Pencil one will work on here. Not really. Yeah, that doesn't work. Maybe some other kind of stylus that's more meant to be that way, but that would be something else. Yeah, $1,000 is a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. All right, guys. Good chatting with you today. I got to run, but I'll see you next week. Cheers.